Somewhere deep in the mountains of Japan, there is a village that once held hundreds of lives. Children played in its streets. Farmers rose before dawn to work its fields. Families gathered around hearths that had burned for generations. Today, the only sounds are wind through broken roof tiles and silence. Japan has over 60,000 settlements classified as marginal communities, places where more than half the residents are over the age of 65 and where the population is actively disappearing. Hundreds of these have already crossed the point of no return. They are not ruins of ancient civilizations. They are villages that were alive within living memory and are now completely empty. This is the story of Japan's forgotten villages, and it is far stranger and far sadder than you might expect. To understand Japan's forgotten villages, you first need to understand a number hiding in plain sight. Japan's population peaked in 2008 at around 128 million people. Since then, it has been shrinking, slowly at first, then faster. By 2050, projections suggest Japan could lose 30 million people. That's roughly the entire population of Australia, gone from the census in 3 decades. But the crisis isn't distributed evenly. Japan's cities, Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, are still growing, drawing young people in from every corner of the country. It is the countryside that is being hollowed out. And not just slowly. In some prefectures, entire districts are losing more than 10% of their population every 5 years. The Japanese government even has a word for it, kaso, meaning depopulation, or more literally, emptying out. And once a village reaches a certain threshold, the emptying becomes self-reinforcing. The school closes, then the doctor leaves, then the last shop, and then, one by one, so do the families. But this didn't begin yesterday. The roots of Japan's forgotten villages stretch back over a century, and the story involves war, industrialization, and a way of life that the modern world slowly made impossible. For most of Japan's history, the mountains were not empty. They were alive. During the Edo period, Japan's feudal lords, the daimyo, actively encouraged the settlement of mountainous regions. Mountain villages supplied the timber, charcoal, silk, and rice that powered Japan's economy. Communities carved terraced rice fields into near vertical hillsides. They built elaborate irrigation systems. They developed distinct dialects, distinct crafts, and distinct ways of understanding the world, shaped entirely by the landscape that surrounded them. These were not poor, forgotten places. They were the engine rooms of feudal Japan. Then came the Meiji Restoration of 1868, and everything changed. Japan modernized at a breathtaking pace, building railways, factories, and urban centers. For the first time, the city offered something the mountain couldn't, a wage. Young people began to leave, not many at first, but enough. World War II accelerated the collapse. Many young men from rural villages never came home. Those who did returned to a country that was rebuilding itself, and rebuilding meant cities. The economic miracle of the 1950s and 60s pulled millions of rural Japanese into urban factories. Entire generations relocated in a single decade. By the 1970s, some mountain villages had already lost the critical mass needed to sustain themselves. Schools consolidated. Roads that had once been maintained by communal labor fell into disrepair. And a quiet tragedy began to unfold in the hills, one that most of Japan's booming cities barely noticed. Of all Japan's forgotten villages, none tells the story quite like Nagoro. Nagoro once held over 300 residents. Today, fewer than 30 people remain, nearly all of them elderly. But Nagoro is not empty. Walk its streets and you will encounter figures sitting at bus stops, working in the fields, perched in classroom seats. Over 350 life-size dolls, hand-sewn by a local woman named Tsukimi Ayano, now populate the village, placed wherever a former resident once lived or worked. Ayano began making the dolls in 2003 after her father died. She made one in his likeness, placed it in his garden, and found she couldn't stop. Each doll represents a real person, a neighbor, a classmate, a family member who left or passed away. The dolls are not art. They are memory made physical, a refusal to let the village forget itself. It seems almost impossible, an abandoned island that is technically part of Tokyo. But Hachijo Kojima, a small volcanic island 70 kilometers south of its larger neighbor, has been completely uninhabited since 1969. At its peak, around 150 people lived on the island, fishing and farming its steep volcanic terrain. But a series of disasters, crop failures, a typhoon, dwindling fish stocks, pushed the community past breaking point. In August 1969, the last 8 residents were evacuated by the Japanese government. They left behind houses, a school, a small shrine. The island's dense subtropical jungle has been reclaiming everything ever since. Today, it sits uninhabited, just 290 kilometers from the most populated city on Earth. In the mountains of Gunma Prefecture, the ruins of Japan's silk industry lie scattered across the hillsides. In the Meiji and Taisho eras, this region was one of the most economically vital in Japan. Its sericulture industry, the raising of silkworms for silk production, powered Japan's early industrialization and connected these remote mountains to global trade routes reaching as far as Europe and America. The villages that grew up around silk farming were, for a time, prosperous. They built elaborate wooden farmhouses with distinctive raised roof lines, designed specifically to maximize airflow for the silkworms kept on upper floors. These buildings, known as gasho zukuri, became architectural icons. Some were preserved, most were not. When synthetic fabrics collapsed global silk prices in the mid-20th century, the economic foundation of these villages simply vanished. Within a generation, the people followed. Today, the forests of Gunma hide dozens of these farmhouses. Roofs caved in, floorboards rotted through, the silkworm racks still standing inside. When a village disappears, it doesn't just lose its buildings, it loses its knowledge. Generations of farmers understood their specific valley, its microclimate, its soil, its seasonal rhythms, in ways that took centuries to accumulate. Artisans carried techniques that existed nowhere else. Festivals encoded communal histories that were never written down. When the last elder leaves, all of that leaves with them. Japan's government has responded with programs that would have seemed unthinkable decades ago. The Akiya scheme, Akiya meaning empty house, lists hundreds of abandoned rural properties for sale, sometimes for as little as a few $1,000s, to anyone willing to restore and inhabit them. Some villages are paying newcomers to relocate. A handful are even welcoming foreign residents. And it is working, partially. A small but growing movement of young Japanese, disillusioned with urban life, are moving into rural areas. Some are restoring buildings. Some are reviving crafts. Some are simply seeking a quieter life in the mountains their grandparents left behind. Whether it is enough, and whether it has come in time, is a question Japan is still trying to answer. Japan's forgotten villages are not simply sad stories. They are a mirror held up to the forces that shape every modern society. The pull of cities, the cost of modernity, the things we abandon in the rush toward the future. There are thousands of them, each one different, each one carrying a history that deserves to be told. In the next episode of this series, we go deeper into a single village in Tokushima Prefecture that has a story unlike any other. A place where, for over a century, the outside world barely knew it existed, and where the people who lived there intended to keep it that way. If you want to see that story, subscribe, and I'll see you there.